The BCN Liberation Triangle. Black Christian nationalism seeks to change society in order to accomplish the liberation of black people and realizes that we as a people are engaged in a struggle for power and for our survival. We utilize the BCN Liberation Triangle as a godly symbol to Kasanyawatu and bring black people together to create oneness and unity amongst our people, to build a nation within a nation, where we control our own institutions that governs our lives. The Liberation Triangle is a symbol of Kodi, where we voluntarily tax ourselves to fund the black nation, and is the financial basis of building a nation. The Liberation Triangle is also a symbol of Kazi, which is communal work and responsibility, where we collectively work together on a common program that's designed to liberate the African diaspora from the oppression, exploitation, and brutality of our colonial oppressors. Through Kasanyawatu, Kodi, and Kazi, we will once again build the kingdom of heaven on earth for our people throughout the African diaspora. As black Christian nationalists all over the world, we pledge to let the power of the Liberation Triangle work its wonders in us, to take the power of the Liberation Triangle to African people across the world. May God and the black nation be our witness that we exist to take black Christian nationalism to black people everywhere.
Yeah, today we're going to deal with the wrath of Yahweh, and I put that in there because the panel downstairs, that's what the panel said. I said I better try to line up with the panel. So we're going to do it like that. We're dealing with Zephaniah today, Prophet Zephaniah, continuing with our minor prophets. I hope everybody's been getting something out of the minor prophet lessons. But Zephaniah means Yahweh protects. Zephaniah was the first of the writing prophets since Prophet Isaiah and Prophet Micah and the fall of Israel, the north. Zephaniah prophesied during King Josiah's reign before Deuteronomic reform and Josiah, and before the prophet Jeremiah. So we're saying that even though a lot of the prophetic books are mentioned before Zephaniah, a lot of the minor prophets are mentioned before him, but he actually was the first minor prophet to speak after Isaiah and Micah from the north. So you remember we talked about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. He was actually one of the first prophets for the southern kingdom. The renowned King Josiah was the king of the southern kingdom, Judah, around 640 to 609 BCE. Josiah is known for the Deuteronomic reform and the covenant renewal under his leadership. It's interesting with King Josiah because his father and his grandfathers were corrupt kings. The black nation Israel, they had a tradition of you had to be in the line of David to become the king, because the king was supposed to be the Messiah to lead Israel to prosperity. But Josiah's grandfather and his father were very corrupt. And Josiah came. When he came on in the reign, he was a very young boy, about 8 or 9 years old. So it's very interesting you try to do some good positive things, Deuteronomic reform, but your father and your grandfather were just corrupt. They praying to all the foreign gods, idol worshiping, building temples, and desecrating the altar. So it's very interesting that Josiah was able to break from that negative energy from his father and his grandfather, and I almost go back to his great grandfather, which was King Hezekiah. And King Hezekiah was one of the good kings as well, and he did some positive things in terms of that Deuteronomic reform. So There's always hope. So, just because you might have your family might start from a obscure beginning, you still have hope that you can break out of that tradition, that energy field that's created within the home. But there's an energy in the home that a lot of times that prevent people from going forward. So sometimes you got to break out of that energy and move forward. Because this energy, even though you don't see it, it exists within the home. It exists in the community. It exists between all of us in the church. We have to be aware of that unified energy field.
That's right.
During the last quarter of the 7th century, the Assyrian Empire weakened and dissolved by 609 BCE. The period of Assyrian weakness allowed the remaining black nation Israel, which is Judah in the south, to expand and recapture regions in the north, the former kingdom of Israel, that had been taken by the Assyrian Empire. This was a brief period of relatively calm and peace for the black nation Israel because Egypt had become weak, Assyria had turned more inward, and the Babylonian Empire was just forming. So Josiah was able to go back to the north, and sometimes you take some time to look at some of these maps. He went back up into the northern kingdom and captured some of these periods, some of these places. You might can't see it, but Judah over here and Israel in the north. But when the Assyrians came in and their empire, they took a lot of this land from the black nation Israel. Josiah, after they had turned inward and the Assyrian Empire got weak, Josiah was able to recapture some of that land because there was no longer larger kingdoms out there trying to prevent and trying to keep power in that area. So this was like a time of nationalism. It was a time of hope. It was because you're taking land, you're building buildings, and your kingdom is getting larger. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to get back to the kingdom, the size of the kingdom that it was when David was the king. So there was a great sense of nationalism that was going on in that period, and that's why Josiah is known to be one of the great kings of Israel. It wasn't many, even though there were a lot of them, but most of them were corrupt. The prophet Zephaniah prophesied during this time, denouncing the evils of his age brought by Judah and the surrounding nation. He shared a familiar blessing and curses message, not blaming God for the free will action of his people themselves, but for their dismal state of affairs. Because Zephaniah's outspokenness, it is believed that the people and the king were moved to a better conduct for a while. It was during this period that the law was found in the temple. Overall, these prophets, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah, proved to be giving the final warning a little too late. They were conquered by the Babylonians soon after. And that's a quote from the BCN Bible Study Workbook, the prophetic books. But those minor prophets came and they talked. They was trying to get the black nation Israel to maintain the covenant, maintain the law, and Israel had a hard time from day one trying to keep that law. And it was interesting that the prophets kept coming trying to teach that. So you have this cycle, and I think it was dealt with when we were dealing with the judges. We had this cycle that the Zephaniah message was familiar with the other prophets, and even in the book of Judges, you had sin, which we say turning away from God and turning away from your black brothers and sisters. Then oppression took over the nation. They were oppressed, they were exploited by other people. Then you had repentance. They repented. They called upon God. They said they had a contrite heart, and I'm going to treat my brothers and sisters right. I'm going to do better. I'm going to confess. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then they were restored. They had periods of freedom and periods of nationalism, and then they would revert back to negative behavior. So it was just this cycle that existed in the black nation Israel, and a lot of that is in the prophetic books. This cycle of sin, oppression, repentance, restoration is just a cycle. Now we're gonna move up to Lent later on next month. So hopefully we can get some contrite hearts around here.
Well,
and
make it plain.
Find our way back to God and find our way back to our black brothers and sisters.
That's right.
And help get the nation moving in the right direction. But this period prior to Zephaniah and Josiah was one of the low points. This was a very low period. I talked about the kings, Josiah's grandfather, but they were not good kings, and they did a lot of negative things. So I'm going to read, just to give you a little brief snippet of it. In the book of Kings, 2 Kings, talking about Manasseh. It said Manasseh was 12 years old when he came to the throne, and he reigned for 55 years in Jerusalem. His mother was Hephzibah. He did what was displeasing to Yahweh, copying the shameful practices of the nations whom Yahweh had disposed for the sons of Israel. He built the high places that his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He set up altars of Baal and made a sacred pole of Ahab, king Israel had done. He worshipped the whole array of heavens and served it. He built altars in the temples of Yahweh, in which Yahweh had said, Jerusalem is where I will give my name, my holy name. But he built altars to the whole array of heavens, and in the two courts of the soothsaying and magic, and he had introduced wizards and all other kind of stuff. He did very many things that were displeasing to Yahweh, thus provoking the anger. He did many, he placed, it's kind of giving a hard time here. He did very, very many wrong things, displeasing Yahweh, thus provoking his. He placed the carving images of Asherah, which he had done in the temple. So it was just a lot of stuff that Manasseh was doing that made the nation seem to suffer.
Well,
I hope I give you a pretty good understanding, but I'm trying to just set up the environment in which Zephaniah was coming to try to get the black nation Israel back to God.
right.
Zephaniah gave a warning to the chosen people to attempt to lead them back to Yahweh by repentance, obedience, humility, and he warned that this is the only way that the black nation could survive. So that's what the Bible is teaching us. We try to get lessons from the black nation Israel, that if only through unity, only through harmony, only through love for our brothers and sisters can we survive as a people. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and if we can't be unified, if we can't stay together long enough, effective enough, and productive enough, it's just about impossible to throw off the shackles of bondage and keep oppression from becoming worse.
That's
right.
I
know anybody can look in the world and know we do not want a black community any worse than it is today.
That's right.
I mean, it would be unbearable if we had to feel like we're going to leave our kids, our grandkids, a type of world that's going to be worse than it is for us today.
That's right.
But that's what Zephaniah was trying to do. Hey, there's things going on. We got to get our life together, and we have to be unified. The people of Judah had abandoned the covenant and the law, and thus brought on themselves the wrath of Yahweh, when we say the day of the Lord. Zephaniah radically intensified the earlier views of Amos, because he was one of the first prophets that talked about the day of Yahweh, the wrath of God, and he talked about it was going to be dark and it was going to be gloomy and all that. But when Zephaniah came, he said it's going to be even worse than that.
Well,
he talked about the fish is going to be dead in the sea and everything.
Well,
it was just going to be no existence. Everything would be just destroyed. Everything would come to an end. So he kind of intensified that wrath of Yahweh. Zephaniah prophesied on the specific sins of the black nation Israel. So a lot of times they say, no, but what are the sins in the Bible? What did the black nation Israel do? Why were they oppressed? Why were they exploited? Well, during that period of time, you had the remnant of Baal worshipers, which espoused the religion of Canaan. When they went into the promised land, there was always other nations there. There was always other people, and they had religions. Wow. They had their way of life, and and some of them intermingled with each other, and a lot of times the black nation Israel had a tendency to worship Baal.
Well,
And
watch out.
which was what was that? Which was a problem with keeping the Ten Commandments. Then you had your rooftop worshipers who paid homage to the Assyrian host of heaven, but these were the Assyrian gods, and I don't know why I said it was their rooftop, but they basically worshiping the Assyrians' way of life, and I guess some of their archaeology, some of that zodiac stuff they were doing. Then you had those who swore by Milcom, chief deity of Ammonites. They were another group of people that were in the promised land that kept, the black nation Israel had a hard time sticking to the covenant, sticking to the law. These fertility gods they had, because it was an agricultural environment.
Well.
So it made sense to a rational mind that I should pray to a fertility god. Right. I should pray for rain. I should pray for sun and all this. And that's what the fertility gods were always, Baal and all that. So the black nation Israel struggled with that. Then you had those who turned aside from Yahweh, who did not seek Yahweh, who would not even bother with him. He said in Zephaniah 1:6. Then you had the religiously indifferent, those who insisted that Yahweh had no power for good or evil. So it was a time of prosperity. It was a time of, not many wars going on at that time. And, a lot of times when you don't have much conflict with your enemy, you tend to think that you've gained all this wealth and power by yourself. So that because of some of the material possessions that they were able to obtain and some of the land they were able to retake, people said, well, we don't need God. We don't need Yahweh anymore.
That's right.
Yahweh is not going to do good. Yahweh is not going to do bad. We're just going to do what we need to do. We don't need any rules and regulations and all that.
We're going to be all right.
Yeah, we just do it, Then you go on to say in 1:8, Zephaniah 1:8, on the day of Yahweh's sacrifice, I would punish ministers for royal princes and those who dress themselves in foreign style. So we obviously they had a dress code. They had issues, and this was a problem with Zephaniah. He said, "Those in the fire, because you want to wear clothes like the Assyrians wear. You want to wear the clothes like the Babylonians wear, and the Amorites and all the Baal worshippers. They had a certain dress code. They said, no, we don't dress like that. We dress like we dress. We represent a certain thing.
That's right.
We want to project a certain style to the public. So, that was a sin, in Zephaniah's time. Then in 1:8, it goes on to say, on the day, I mean to punish all those who are near the throne, those who fill the palace with the Lord with violence and deceit. Being deceitful, running the temple, being deceitful with it. People trying to come to the temple and make sacrifices, worshiping, and they trying to profit from them, and exploitation going on there.
Watch out now.
Then it goes on to 3:2, she would never listen to the call, would never learn the lesson. She had never trusted Yahweh, never draw near to God. So they had religiously become alienated from God.
That's right.
And they had also become alienated from their black brothers and sisters. So it was a problem in that particular time, and same as black people today. We've gotten somewhat alienated from one another.
That's right.
We've got, everybody want to do their own thing,
how
they want to do it, and not concerned with the conditions of black people. And so we're powerless. We don't have the power that white people have, so we can't go through the world individualistic, only concerned about our personal well-being.
That's right.
We're an oppressed group of people. We're oppressed black people. We have to unify. We have to believe in things that will help us become more powerful as a nation. So we move on to this new year, and during the new year, a lot of times we try to reevaluate what happened last year, and you try to evaluate what's going on. So I was dealing with the new racism that exists in the world. And in some cases the new racism is the same as the old racism. You got Trump calling know, people from Africa and Haiti, shithole countries.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, you know, what does that mean? He's referring to brothers and sisters from Africa, Haiti. These are black people saying some shit. Okay, well, how does he feel about us?
Well,
You know, obviously he feel the same way about us. You know? and if he could do it, he'd be saying, I want to not let these Africans and people from Haiti in. I want to kick all them out, and you know who will be next.
well,
You know, so it's a lot going on. Then he gets on the rally, and they had a rally trying to get rid of some of the Confederate monuments. Got the Ku Klux Klan up there protesting and marching, and he's saying, well, there are good people over there.
Wow.
You know, there are good people over there in the Ku Klux Klan. So he's telling you who he identified with.
Well.
He's telling you where it stands. He's telling you how he feels about other people.
That's right.
Particularly black people.
That's
He's
right.
telling you, the Klan said they can't stand black people. They want these monuments up. They don't care if it's a slap in our face. They want them up.
That's
You know,
right.
So what does that mean for us? So that's the way Trump carry on. And we have to understand, we can't water down our message as if our relationship with white people has gotten different.
Well,
our
make a plan.
relationship with white people is the same.
That's right.
And if not worse, because of some of the new realities that exist. And then this wasn't under the Trump administration, but you had the voting rights laws that were struck down.
Right.
And back in a few years ago, where these southern states had to get pre-clearance from the government to make changes to their voting rights.
Well.
But then the Supreme Court said, no, y'all don't have to do that no more because racism is over.
Right.
You know, y'all can monitor yourself. And all these states started passing all these laws that making it difficult to vote. You got to pay $40 and $50 for ID. Most people don't vote as it is.
Well.
So you know they're not going to pay $50 for ID to vote.
Right.
That's
right.
insane. And the Republicans know that, so they put that in effect, and they know that's going to suppress the vote. And that's something going on. But a lot of the racism, you know, or the things that what's that old saying? The more things change, the more things remain the same.
That's right.
You know, in 1954, Dwight Eisenhower, one of the presidents of white Southerners, he had a quote that says, white Southerners are not bad people. All they are concerned about is to see their sweet little girls not required to sit in schools alongside with some big overgrown Negroes. He was talking about the segregation at that time.
Well.
This is President Eisenhower. You know, this is in the 50s. Then you go on to Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson came along in the 60s, and he talked about Lyndon Johnson would routinely use the N-word and call civil rights legislation nigger bills.
Right.
So all these bills you're trying to pass so you can make life better, you won't have to deal with this blatant Jim Crow laws and segregation, but he calls it nigger bill.
Well.
You know, it's what he's going to call it. Then you go on to in the 70s, you got Richard Nixon. Y'all know Tricky Dick.
Tricky Dick.
He referred to black people as Negroes, bastards who live like dogs.
Well.
These are your presidents. They all from the same breed.
That's right.
You know, they all feel the same about us.
That's
Then
right.
he goes on to say, we're going to put more of these little Negro bastards on the welfare rolls at $2,400 a family. Let people like Pat Moynihan believe in all that crap. I don't believe in it. Work, throw them off the rolls. That's the key. So, you know, they've always been talking about throwing black people off welfare.
Right.
You know, you need to get a job when they're, in all practicality, less jobs, unless you have the technical skills to get the new jobs in the modern technological era. So all this is what these presidents are doing. It's just a line of it. You might get a break every now and then. You know, one of them might get a break. And then one of them might not call you a nigga in your face, but that's going on. Then you got President Reagan. Y'all remember President Reagan, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he went on. He's talking about the welfare queen. That was his thing. You know, the welfare. You know, he believed that sisters in the welfare, they got, they driving Cadillacs in the ghetto, in the projects. They driving Cadillacs and they making all this money. I don't know what projects he's talking about, but I don't see him running around driving a whole bunch of Cadillacs and all that.
Well.
But that was just the neck. He was just trying to separate the black votes from the white votes, and which they effectively did. Because in actuality, most white people now vote Republican, and most of them do not vote Democratic anymore. So that's some of your presidents. So the new racism is the same. We have to build a black nation.
That's right.
That's our only choice. We don't have another choice.
Right.
They said, do we have another choice? We can all be, we can try to integrate, but we tried that. That ain't gonna work, didn't work, never was gonna work.
Well.
And we knew it wasn't gonna work. We said that, Jeremiah, maybe Osman said that for years. White man is not gonna integrate with us.
That's right.
You know, that's fool's gold. To think that white people are gonna integrate with you. I put some charts there, and they're saying we got just a couple more minutes, but in your outline you have some charts there, and I'm trying to show the median household income of black people versus white people, and also the median net worth of black people versus white people. And you can see from, in the first one, and that goes back to the 60s on up to around 2000, the gap between black and white is the same.
Well,
we've made no ground. We have not picked up any new ground to say that the struggle for black liberation is over.
Well,
I've seen documents around here in the nation talking about the struggle for black liberation is over, and we should move to something else.
Well,
but you look at this chart, you can see the struggle for black liberation is the same.
Well,
you know, white people still make more money and have more wealth than black people. That gap between us is the same, if not wider. You look at that bottom chart,
well,
talking about medium net worth, that's you know, you add up your assets, your liabilities, and that's what you got at the end. And then you said black people got $11,000. You know, because you know your liabilities take away from your assets. You know, so you might have, you know, this big house, but that's a liability. That ain't no asset because you got to pay on it.
That's
right.
So,
yeah, it's $11,000. But you see this gap, and the white people are over 100,000, and this is widening.
Right.
So this is we can't say the struggle. I don't care how older people get or you know how young they are. The struggle for liberation is the same.
Right. We
have to pass on the struggle for liberation to younger black people, and we also have to continue the struggle for liberation ourselves.
That's right.
The only way we do it. So surviving the new racism, modern trends further imperil black people. The political conservatism of the Republican Party that now dominates national politics, along with the emergence of sophisticated technological era, has made the masses of black people with little education and few skills economically obsolete.
Right.
We no longer have a viable and productive role to play in the white system of power. The decline of life for the masses of black people have been heavily borne by young black males. That's why they have to lock them up and round them up, and police brutality and all that, you know, because their white people feel like, you know, these black people, we don't need them no more, you know, so we need to lock them up. You know, they all smoking weed, they all got weed in the car and all that, so just pull them over and you're going to find something.
Well,
the black males are a endangered species in the white system of power. And that nothing has changed.
Right.
Black people young black males are an endangered species. White people don't feel like they need it. That's why they ramp up their criminal justice activities so you can keep them in check and lock them up. So that's what we got to do coming up this new year. We got to enhance our efforts in black liberation.
That's right.
We got to continue to try to break our dependency on the white man. If we can't break our dependency on the white man, we cannot be free.
Make it plain.
If we cannot house ourselves, if we cannot clothe ourselves, we cannot be free.
That's right.
You know, so, you know, any talk about doing something other than housing, feeding, educating yourself is basically black insanity.
Amen. All right.